Welcome to the Renaissance Achiever with Sarah Fui. Today we have special guest Deepika Sandhu. Deepika is the CEO of SoulSparks Press, a publishing company. She is a four-time award-winning best-selling author, a TV show host, and retired Silicon Valley business executive, while also being a mom. Welcome, Deepika. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I really want to talk about your book, Hello Universe, It's Me, an incredible book that I listened to the audiobook. So if you're someone who has a hard time picking up books to read, she has the audiobook version of this. And you talk about how you scheduled a breakdown and manifested a new life. So can you just kind of explain what you mean by scheduling a breakdown?
Yeah, girl, I didn't have time to just break down on a random Tuesday, right? Like, I am your typical type A personality. I have everything, all my life scheduled to the nines. And when I realized that something needed to change in my life, that I couldn't just keep complaining about the same things, that I didn't want to wake up at 50 feeling the same way that I felt at 40, I realized I needed to get underneath it all. And I'm a Silicon Valley business exec. I have advised many large companies, many companies that are probably apps on your phone right now on
Wow.
how they can operate their businesses. So I sure as heck could figure out how I needed to operate my own life better. I just knew I needed to give myself the space and time to be able to do so. So yeah, I quite literally scheduled a breakdown. I looked at the calendar and said, when can I fit this in?
I
And I
love
put
it.
it on the calendar for a whole month. And I gave myself permission to unravel this life. I couldn't be like
Mm.
Julia Roberts and eat, pray, love and just run away to Italy or Indonesia or wherever she goes to go find herself. I had a little kid at home and I needed to be able to find myself right inside my regular everyday life. So I did.
I love that. I love that. And when you say breakdown, you're really meaning like, I need to pause, get out of the rat race of everyday life, work, and all these demands, and just sit and really feel because so many of us are just numb and running through the motions of life, right? But you're like, something's not right. I need to figure out what that is and figure out what adjustments I need to make to live more
Exactly.
aligned. Yeah.
Exactly. It isn't that I needed to fall apart completely. It's not that I needed to cry it out all day long, although there was plenty of crying it out along the way. But what it really was to sit back and go, is this way that I have been living this life the way that I want to continue to live it? Does it all actually have to be this way? And the crazy part about it is this life I was living, I carefully curated this life, right?
Mm,
I did well at school. I got good jobs. I did well at those jobs. I kept getting promoted. I kept making more money. I got married. I had the kid. I had the house. I had the car. I had the loads of
the
smiling
social life, all the
fun. So
demands.
all
Yeah.
of it, all of it. And everything I was living in, I created. But the question became, is everything that I'm living in is not lighting me up, is not making me feel the way I think I want to feel in this life, then I needed to take a pause to truly step back and see, is this the way that it's meant to go? So like you said, it's getting out of the hamster wheel. It's getting out of the rat race long enough to sit with myself to say, what would I love?
Yeah. I love that. And so many times, this ideal that we have of a life, it's not even coming from us. It's like society telling us, this is what you want. You want this career, you want this income, you want this
Yeah.
house. And it's like, what if I don't want all of the responsibilities attached to that? Right. So just getting really honest with yourself. And I love that you mentioned the whole eat, pray, love thing because you're like, how many people can just take off half a year and go travel, to foreign countries? It's not practical for everyone. And you were able to have your so-called breakdown at home. So how long did that extend and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I could not be gone for half of the year, and I had a little kid at home. I wasn't going to leave her behind to go find myself. That was not
Hmm.
an option for me. What was an option for me was to take a month off of work. To my friends and family, I said I was taking a week off for every decade of my life. I had just turned 40 to and I would tell people that work gave me a sabbatical, except that wasn't true. I just took time off,
I
right?
love it. You're like, I
So
have to
I made,
cover up my breakdown.
yeah, I made it palatable to the people around me, but I knew what I was doing, right? I took a
Hmm.
month off and I really did not work at all. And I am a hard worker, always have been, attached to my phone, attached to the emails and the zings and the zaps coming through all day. I shut all of that down. I deleted the email app from my phone. You could not reach me. I was not going to respond. I didn't open my work laptop up for a month. I did not care if anybody was contacting me. I really was off. And I started to say no to all the things in my day to day life that I did not enjoy. And I started
I
to say
love it.
yes to the things I wanted to do more of. So if I wanted to sit at the coffee shop and just stare out the window aimlessly, I did. If I wanted to journal for 2 hours or 10 minutes, I did. I learned to paint during this time. I took yoga in the middle of the day. I just did things that gave me large open spaces to consider my life. But I still
Mm.
kept the parts that I was loving. I love driving my daughter to school every morning and singing songs together. I love our evening routine of playing our word games and reading our stories. I kept the pieces I loved and I really consciously, intentionally dismantled the things that were just taking up space and just didn't need to do that anymore.
I'm so curious, how did you do that? Going from this like type A person to being like, I don't care what anyone thinks, I'm going to do what I want to do. Like, how did you let go of the guilt or the worry of judgment in saying no to things?
Well, I realized really quickly, kind of leading up to this point in my life, how unhappy I was, how doing all the things, saying yes to all the things was actually not filling me up, was not giving me joy, was not making me smile. It was doing quite the opposite. So scheduling this time and very intentionally saying no is very freeing. No is a full sentence, right? Like
Yes.
no is a full sentence that we all need to be able to embrace. And once you start saying no to the things in your life you don't want to do, you can't really pull them back in, right? It starts to
Yeah.
feel
It
really
feels so
freeing.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, I think so many people are stuck in that position where they don't even realize that they can be saying no. And when they do realize they can, they really struggle with feeling selfish. Did you experience any of that?
Mhm.
Like, this is selfish of me.
I think I was able to really quickly rewire selfish to self care. Just because you say yes to the other people in your life or to situations and circumstances that even you don't want to be a part of, just because you say yes doesn't make you a good person and it doesn't make you more right than anyone else. Saying no is truly the ultimate act of self care. Being a little selfish and prioritizing yourself is actually the ultimate act of self care. And the more that I prioritized myself, the better I was able to show up in my life as me and for the people I really wanted to show up for.
Totally. And when you're saying yes to things you don't really want and you think you're being this martyr and that you're being a good, kind person, but you're harboring resentment, like, how is that good for the other person when you're harboring resentment? It's not, right? I'm thinking about this exercise I recently did with Rudy Ricksteins in this conference I went to, and he does this visualization with a mood elevator. And I think there's research about this that the emotion that has the highest vibration is actually authenticity. And so when you're saying no, you are being authentic and you're opening up that space for like a deeper relationship with the people in your life instead of people pleasing, being nice, but you're not being honest. And it's not really benefiting anyone, right?
I totally agree. The more authentic we are, the more true we are, the better it feels in our body, right?
Yes.
And I always say this when I entered my scheduled breakdown, it was like my future self was clapping and cheering me on and going,
I
yay,
love
we're
it.
so excited you're finally here. Because there are versions of myself that could see
Mm.
even in that moment that the way I was acting, the way I was behaving, the things I was accepting in my life, we have a little furry visitor,
Hi
so
there.
were really sabotaging my life, right? It was really me not acting in the awareness of what I needed to be doing. And
Yeah.
I was playing small. And I think just the act of stepping into this scheduled breakdown, this intentional time to really examine and look at my life was me leaning into me. And I don't think I knew at that time exactly what my truest, most authentic self was. I had been
Mm,
living a certain way for a long period of time, and I think I had truly forgotten what that version
yeah.
of me was. But creating this space and time gave me permission to say, who am I
Mm.
and what would I love?
I love that. I love that. Just getting really honest with yourself and
Yeah.
listening.
And
Yeah.
that takes you towards your authentic self, your truest self, the way you are meant to be operating in this life. But we deny it and deny it and deny it. And we put all these pressures and other people's priorities and beliefs on top of it. And it doesn't have to be that way,
Yeah. Then
right?
you're
It
just
really
always
doesn't.
in this internal conflict. Yeah. This struggle.
Yeah. But now there's no struggle, right? When you
Yes.
really lean into who you're meant to be and how you're meant to be living this life, and you understand what your own internal truths are, which takes work, it takes effort, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
instantaneous. Living from that place, though, that authentic place, there's nothing like it. And like you said, that vibration, that energy on the ladder that you described is the highest, the very best feeling that's out there.
Authentically true to yourself. I
It,
love that. And I feel like so many people with kind of your personality, like type A, super ambitious, high achieving people, are afraid that if I slow down and I have this breakdown and I step out, what if I never get back to myself
yeah.
again, right? I've heard that from people. I'm like, what if I'm not myself anymore? Or I never go back to my high achieving. I just become lazy or lost or floundering. And it's like, it's not true because you came back on top and have been slaying at all kinds of amazing projects, but now that are aligned with what is really meaningful to you, right?
There's a fear, I think, with high achievers that it can somehow all go away, that the rug
Mm,
can get pulled out from under you. And I will say the rug got pulled out from under me too. I go
hmm.
through a divorce. I lose all of my money. I do really have to reestablish myself. I adjust to a new normal with my daughter and her going between two homes. At that time, it definitely did feel like the rug got pulled out from under me. But the rug doesn't get pulled out from under you if you're not going to build a new rug, right?
Yeah.
Even as a high achieving professional, I think what I learned is I know how to stand up on my own 2 feet. And everything that happened to me was truly happening for me and for the betterment of where I was meant to go in my life.
You have to break down to rebuild,
There you go.
slow
Yes.
down to speed up, all of
Yeah.
that. Yes.
All good.
So, what advice would you give to someone who knows that they need a breakdown? They need to have this time of self reflection and adjustment, but they can't logistically take off a month of their life. Like you said, you had your daughter and everything, but maybe financially they can't take off from work or they're
Yeah.
really in survival mode. Do you have any advice to someone on how they could navigate their own breakdown?
Create your day to day pause practices. Create the space in your day to pause and reflect. Everybody has the same amount of time. We all have the same 24 hours in our day. I do, you do, Oprah does, Taylor Swift does, the President of the United States does. It's all what we are choosing to do with our time. And so when people say, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, I don't have time for this, it's really like, go look at what you're spending your time on
Hmm.
and find the spaces within your day to pause and to reflect, to truly create your own pause practice. Not only do that, but give yourself true permission to hear what comes through in those moments. The
Yeah.
main thing about scheduling the breakdown was not, oh, I got to take a month off. Yes, I recognize that's a luxury for people, but what I got to do was take away the noise of my day,
Mm.
consciously extract the bits and pieces of my days that were not serving me, say no to people, but also to replace those moments with things that rejuvenated, replenished, and renewed me. And when I did that, whether it was connecting with art, whether it was writing more, whether it was just staring out the window, looking at a hummingbird going by, those moments created the pathways for the messages to land about what I needed to hear about my life. And
Yes.
when those messages landed, the nudges from the universe, right? The soul sparking moments, those created the space for me to go, I should really do something about that. So not
Yes.
only did I create pockets of space, I allowed new things to come through, I created the pathways for things to come through, and I listened. So
Yeah.
you don't need a whole giant scheduled breakdown. You don't need to run off to go find yourself somewhere out there. This is an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
And our real life is our inside life, right? So giving yourself space to connect with the innermost version of yourself is what gives us the opportunity for new information to come through. And when that new information comes through, we get to act on it, right?
Yes, I love it. The self care isn't just about relaxing or having fun, it's about creating a space where you can receive inspiration,
Yeah.
guidance, connect with your intuition about what you need. And the whole point of the pause is to listen. And you can do that like literally 5 minutes a day. Make that a practice to like be calm, whether it's meditation or prayer, and like ask the questions and sit and listen to what are the thoughts or feelings that are coming up for me. I love
Yeah.
that.
Just be
Mm.
silent. Sit in
Mhm.
silence for a bit. I wake up before my daughter gets up, at least an hour before, maybe an hour and a half before. I'm a morning person. That's my time. But I can sit during that time and journal and drink my coffee quietly, not be on social media, not watch TV, not check the news, just quietly sitting there, journaling, sipping my coffee, honestly, just staring at the walls, which is really all meditation even is, right? It's
Yes,
just
the
giving you,
slowness.
just
Yeah.
slow it down. So find those moments and don't say, well, I don't want to wake up earlier than my kid. Fine, don't. Can you stay up an hour later? Can you find 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there? Literally schedule it and make it part of your life, just like everything else is a part of your life. And the benefits are immense. Like you're not going to regret spending time in reflection or in quiet. You're not going to regret spending time in a pause. It is, in fact, the most nourishing, most healing, most beautiful thing that you will be doing for yourself day in and day out.
It's the best form of self-care, right?
Yeah.
Giving yourself that space. I love it. So in your book, the even in like the subtitle of the book, you talk about how you have this breakdown and you manifested a new life. So I want to talk about manifesting a little because following your Instagram stories, you talk about it a lot. It's a big buzzword and people have a lot of different concepts around it. So I'm just curious if you could explain what manifesting is to you. How would you define it?
For me, manifesting starts with breaking down patterns and programs that don't serve you.
Mm.
I'm sitting in Silicon Valley right now. I worked in this space. We are all a giant computer program, right? We have been fed information from all different sources, parents, schools, teachers, social media, Hollywood, wherever, and our own life experiences. And it all comes into ourselves, our bodies, our computer system. And we, based on all these things that we've heard and experienced, we operate in a certain way. So this situation comes up, it's happened to us before, we respond in the same way. We're just kind of like a typical computer program. But we are allowed to reprogram ourselves, right? Because you will hit a point where you realize, wait a second, I don't think this belief really serves me. I don't really think this is working for me anymore. Why are things like this? You are allowed to create within yourself new patterns and new programs that create a different output. So we
You're
can
writing new code.
you're writing new code, and that's exactly it. And you're allowed to do that. So for me, manifesting started with, well, what am I believing about my life? Am I believing that life has to be this way, that I'm here to just administer life, to be in the hamster wheel, to go through the motions, to do what everybody else is doing? Maybe. Or can I choose to believe that life is meant to be something more? Could I actually write that book? Could I go be in that movie? Could I play that song? Could I go on that trip that I've always imagined? Could I
Mhm.
actually get a different job that I like? Whatever it is, lean into what are the underlying beliefs, the patterns and programs that you have been believing about the topic at hand, and then work to change them into patterns and programs that serve the version of yourself you wish to become.
Yeah.
For me, manifesting is just believing that everything is possible, right? If I get a vision for myself, I actually think I am meant to move towards that vision. I think Neil Donald Walsh says in Conversations with God, you are meant to be the greatest, grandest vision you have ever seen for yourself. So if you're meant to be the greatest, grandest vision, why do we all spend this time kind of chucking the vision to the side and saying, oh, no, that can't happen. That's not
That's
possible.
crazy.
That's
That's
crazy.
impossible. Why
We
would we
let
even
our
have that
inner
idea?
we let our inner hater out to get in the way of everything that we might want to do before we even give it space and time to become what it might be able to become. So, what is manifesting for me? Going back to that, it is reprogramming ourselves to
Hmm.
create patterns and programs that serve the version of ourselves that we want to be. It's quieting down that inner hater, that inner critic that kind of gets in our way and stops us from doing what we would like to do. And three, it's believing that everything truly is possible. We're
I love
yeah,
it. I love that definition. It's so good. It's so good.
yeah.
I have a question then. So, what is the most interesting thing you have ever manifested? Or
Mm.
maybe not interesting because you've done a lot of cool stuff, but what is the most surprising thing you've manifested where it surprised you that it came into fruition?
I think the new company, SoulSparks Press, is the most perfect reflection of everything I should be doing in my life, but didn't know I should be doing in my
I
life.
love it. You didn't know this was your path and then it just fell into it. You're like, what? I love
Yeah,
it.
but did I fall into it or was it given to me? Was I ready to receive? So just to back up on that, I wrote my first book, Hello Universe, It's Me. It has gone on to win multiple awards. It's become a bestseller. It's been translated into Spanish and it stayed on top of Amazon's top releases for something like 6, 7 weeks. It's a very exciting book that continues to get recognized around the world, which is beautiful, right?
Amazing.
And I always thought at the beginning of when the book came out, which was about 4 years ago, that I was just writing a book and maybe, who knows, I would write another book. What I did not know is that I would be helping people write their books. But I had somebody come to me one day and say, Deepika, and let me back up. I tell everybody, you should write a book. You should write a book. Your story is so interesting. You should really write this. But that's where the conversation would end and I'd get them all excited about writing a book and they would go off and do it. Right. Or not do it, as the case may be. But this time I said to somebody, you should really write a book. And he looked at me and said, if you do it with me, I'll do it. And I said, let's go. And that was the start of what we did. And I truly look at that as the universe plopping this thing in my lap. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to see what was possible for themselves. What I didn't know, but universe, source, creator, God knew, is that it would come through books. So I was open
Mm.
to receive what I was desiring or better. And it's often packaged differently than we might imagine it. So in my mind, it wasn't packaged as a publishing company. But when it came through in that way, and now we're 40 authors deep, I was very ready to receive that.
You're like, oh, yes, this is 100% aligned. I just didn't know it. I love it. So tell me more about this because it's fairly new, right? Your publishing company?
Yeah, yeah, it is fairly new, but the books are starting to come out
40
and
authors already.
40
That's wild.
authors writing and co-authored books and their own books. And it's just been a beautiful exploration. And I'm really here to help bring the sweepingly inspirational stories to life. I have seen firsthand with Hello Universe, It's Me, how the magic of one story can continuously open doors to new and new things for you and for your reader. So books have this beautiful, magical way of coming into the world and being whatever it needs to be for that reader. And you just have no idea as the writer what parts of your story are going to connect with the other person and what
Mm.
part of that story is going to be that reader's soul sparking moment. So I love
So
to say
sparks.
that I love to say that I'm just a vessel to bring these sweepingly inspirational stories into the hands of readers around the world because what they'll do for them, we don't know, but we know it'll do something.
And you're not just printing the books out when you say you're a publishing company, like you are walking these authors through the whole creation process, right? Like you're
Yeah,
a book doula, pretty
I
much.
am
You're
a book
helping birth
too.
these books. I love it.
Exactly. Helping people write it, whether it is through book coaching, ghostwriting, ultimately publishing, releasing them to the world, and helping them with all the marketing and
Marketing as
launch.
well.
to bring it
Awesome.
into the hands of readers around the world.
That's
Mhm.
amazing. And so I want to backtrack a little bit because you started out in corporate, right? And you were doing really well. You were named Silicon Valley Woman of Influence, huge. This is a huge part of your career. And when you first wrote Hello Universe, It's Me, you were still in your career when you published it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So how did you end up transitioning out of your career and doing entrepreneurship full time?
Well, first, I allowed both to beautifully coexist for about 4+ years. So, when I wrote the book, my creative pursuits and my professional pursuits were living side by side. And I decided to have the belief that I didn't have to pick one or the other. So, if you reflect back to 2020, 2021, people were talking all about how they were ditching their corporate life, going to be nomads, digital creators, follow their bliss, and do all these different things, which is wonderful and beautiful for all the people who did that. That was not my belief, though. I chose to have the belief that I didn't actually have to pick between the two. There were
Hmm.
still things I wanted to do in my professional career, and I gave myself space and time to do them. But I knew there was also many things I wanted to do in my creative pursuits, and I gave myself space and time to do that. So I actually had the belief for a period of time that these two things could beautifully coexist, and they did. And I think then there hit the point where it was like, okay, I now really know that this creative endeavor is what I want to be doing full time. And so I made the decision to officially retire from my firm at 47 to step into this more fully. And that's what I did. But that decision, again, they don't happen in an instant, right? Not at
No.
all, because it's hard, or it can be seen as very hard to leave something that is as stable and secure as a traditional corporate job like I had. But I also knew that if I didn't take a chance on me, maybe what needed to come in would never come in. So, just like my scheduled breakdown, I had to create space for the new pathways to land. And when I created space by officially telling my company that I was going to leave, that is when SoulSparks Press was actually birthed.
Hmm.
It
You
kind of
have
came
to create the space for the new thing to come in.
100%. So as I created the space, the opportunities started to line themselves up.
Was there a specific moment or incident that kind of, I mean, it was obvious this long process. And I love that you said that we don't have to just burn it all down overnight and be like, I'm going to do this now. And then you're like freaking out in scarcity and not able to create the things you want to create, right? Like you can do both until you feel ready and comfortable. But was there a defining moment that you realized, okay, I know now I need to leave? Like what
Yeah.
pushed you over that?
I think a little bit was, of course, my company wanted me to stay. And there was some back and forth when I officially said, no, I really want to leave. But I hit a point where I was like, no, I don't want to even entertain them trying to keep me. And then I said that. I said, no, let's just mutually move on now. And for me, that was the defining moment because it was continuing to step into the version of myself that I knew I was becoming, continuing to accept the identity of a woman who could put this part of her life in her past. And truly, this career, which was so beautiful and so wondrous for so long, I'm not mad at it. I didn't hate it. It's not that story. That's a lot of other people's story, but that wasn't my story. Instead, it was a story of this is the last thing I was holding on to from that old life. Everything else
Mm.
from that time period of my life where I scheduled the breakdown, I changed the house, the husband, the everything. The only thing that was left from that period of time was this job. And it was time now for me to release that fully as I continued to step into the version of myself that I wanted to become. When your company wants to negotiate with you, most people accept that negotiation, right? But I knew if I were to accept that, that's me stepping back into an older version. And I just
Yes.
knew, like in every part of my being, I meant to step into the newer version of
It's
me.
time to evolve. And I love that you said you didn't hate it. Like, that's not always the case. You actually loved what you did and you were good at it. And that makes the decision a little bit harder. And it kind of reminds me, actually, the last episode I released, I talk about Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap, where
Yeah.
you have the zone of excellence and the zone of genius. And like this corporate career was your zone of excellence. And you were happy there, but there's always good, better, best. And you know that your most authentic self wanted best. And that means I have to let go of this safety zone of excellence so I can find that zone of genius, which is SoulSparks
Yes.
Press. Wow.
And the zone of genius feels better. Operating in SoulSparks Press is a combination of all of my creative pursuits, the writing and the creating and all of that, as well as my corporate pursuits. Everything that I've done
Right.
in my corporate life is serving me right now as I build this business. But operating on all cylinders with something that you love with every cell of your being hits so different than doing it for someone else and their vision and their dream of what they're creating.
Right,
So
right.
for me, operating in this space just hits different. And I'm loving it. I'm
And
absolutely
the impact is so massive with your publishing company. Like you write a book, you impact the people that read it. You start this published company. Not only are you impacting all of the authors to up level their lives, but every single reader of every book and everything that happens from that, like the domino effect. That's so huge. That's so purposeful. That is your zone of genius. I love that. I love that. So now that you're in this place of life, I have one last question for you. What are you most excited about right now?
Mm. I'm excited to keep writing myself. So one of the things I've realized is creating my own company put me a little bit back in hustle mode too, because I want to be the best at things. I've spent all my life being the best at things. And so I've been very busy and my days are very full. I try not to say the B word busy, but my days are very full and they're full of lots of stuff I love. But I also noticed that I was getting a big bit back into hustle because I'm trying to create this thing. But the beautiful part about awareness is I realized that that's what was happening and I could immediately shift it. So now I'm like, aha, how do I organize my week in a way? How do I increase my team members to support this endeavor so that I can create the pockets that continue to rejuvenate, replenish, and renew me? And I already know how to do that because I've been living in that space for
Mm-hmm.
so long. But in the creation of this, I got a little sidetracked in the name of being so passionate and excited. But now it's going back to the writing and
Yeah.
going back to my personal creating. So I think there's more projects in the work for me, more stories I want to tell. I always say there's so many stories inside all of us to share with the world. And I'm just really excited to get back into my own writing more than anything
I
else.
love it. And
Yeah.
finding that those pockets of space so you can do that creative work, right?
Yeah.
Coming full circle. I
Yeah.
lied. I said that was my last question. I have one more question for you. Deepika is like the ultimate Renaissance achiever. She has so many gifts, so many things that you've experienced. And this is something I've been curious about. So you said you were the creator of a TV show or the host of
Right.
a TV show.
Yes.
I want to hear that story a little bit because this was in Australia. What was the show about? How did that come about?
This is
What was
why I
that
say books.
experience?
This is why I say books are magical because they just keep knocking you into the next door and the next door and the next door. So when Hello Universe Hits Me came out, then we did a book tour in the middle of the pandemic during those few months where things were really
Wow.
good. We did small, sort of intimate events up and down the coast of California, which was incredible. That led me towards corporate workshops. Corporate workshops led me to coaching one on one, people to step into their best, most expansive lives. But in doing all of that and sharing all of that on social media, I got noticed by a TV station in Australia that caters to the South Asian population there. And working with them, we created a TV show that was aired there. And it was a really beautiful experience to put a show out.
Not everyone gets to say they've done that. That's huge.
I know. And I think, media and TV, I think this will continue to be a part of what I do. And continuing to get these kinds of opportunities has been really exciting for me. And to bring the message to more and more people has really been powerful.
So was the show based on the concept of the book of living an expansive life or living in alignment?
Yeah, the TV show was based more on lead how to let your burnout lead to your breakthroughs, right?
Oh,
How can
okay.
you
I see
really
that.
break down to break through and get to the next level of yourself? So that's really what the show was about and taking each of these concepts that I talk about in the book and on social media and really expanding it out even further into tangible lessons that people could take away with and work on week over week.
Wow. So it was like
Yeah.
a talk show where you interviewed other people, or was it
More
just you
like
teaching
a,
concepts?
yeah, yeah. I did interview people and then it was also very masterclass oriented, I would say.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
How awesome. Is there any other thoughts that you want to share with our audience about any, I guess, words of wisdom regarding breakdowns, regarding manifesting, regarding your stories, or whatever you're most passionate about?
I think that just that everything is possible. I think we've spent so much of our lives thinking about what could go wrong or why things can't happen. And I just challenge everybody to wake up every day and think about what could go wondrously, amazingly, beautifully right in your day, in your life, and lean into that energy because everything that you see for yourself, it is absolutely, totally, and completely possible for you.
Yes, yes, that belief, recode, right? Write
Yeah.
that new code in your life and start believing in your best life. I love that. Where can our listeners find you if they want to follow you or learn more about your publishing company?
Yes, you can learn more about the publishing company at soulsparkspress.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at deepikasandhu.co.
Thank you. And I'll also add that into the show notes. Thank you so much, Deepika, for sharing your nuggets of wisdom with us. And it has been awesome to connect with you.
Likewise. Thank you, Sarah.